That was your fastest lap of the session.
Welcome back to another lap guide. So this week we're going to be at Mugello. This is one of my favorite tracks. The flow is so nice, especially in the Porsche. So hopefully wishing everybody some good luck this week. I know Daytona's treated most of you guys pretty well, but I think Mugello is going to be a good week for the Porsche. So getting right into it, one of the themes here is definitely going to be patience. We have a lot of long sweeping corners, a lot of high speed stuff, so getting the car pointed fairly early, carrying that momentum, being patient, getting back on throttle is definitely going to be really important here. Now there's a lot of places to get off tracks and slowdowns as well. We're going to cover those as we go through the lap. It's a little tricky. Some places you can cross the line and other places you can't. So there's not a good rule of thumb here. It's kind of a corner by corner, case by case situation. But with that being said, we're going to hop right into it. So coming down the start finish straight, this is definitely a long one. We're going to want to really focus on maintaining a draft, keeping with the lead pack and such. Now coming into turn one, you might initially want to straddle this curbing, which you definitely can. Now if you get your right side tires onto the curbing, you do risk an off track and even a slowdown if you go far enough over to the left. The curbs are also 3D modeled, so they're very, very abrasive. On the fixed setup, I was really struggling to keep the car pretty planted here. So I do touch them a little bit, but you definitely don't want to abuse the curbs here because it can unsettle the car on entry. Now coming into our braking zone, I'm going to use this white line as a reference. You can also use the 100 board as a reference coming into the corner. Now again, as we always say, these are references, not an absolute marker to use, so it'll all be dependent on your brake technique as you come into the corner. So we're going to get on the brakes here. We're going to downshift all the way into third gear. Now there is a little bit of camber coming into the corner, so we want to get into the corner pretty early. If we try to late apex this, you're not going to utilize any of that camber we're talking about, so you'll kind of struggle to get the car pointed and turning as you're coming through T1. Now the other thing to note, making a wide entry and a late apex into this corner will also keep you, or it will make you vulnerable for inside moves. With the draft coming down the start finish, that's definitely going to be a tricky one to go, to cover off. So definitely keep that in mind. Now once we get into the apex, we're going to get our right side tires right onto the curbing. You can even go a little bit further and start to dip them into the grass, which can help with rotation, but it can also make the car a little loose and a little inconsistent. So play around with it. But once we get onto the curbing, we're going to get back on throttle here. As we track out, it's uphill, so the car wants to grip up pretty easily. Now it's going to be very important to unwind the wheel and let the car really flow out of the corner. If you keep too sharp of a steering angle, the rear end will want to get a little loose. You can engage traction control or even spin, so be careful of that. Now coming up to our first chicane, there's not a great reference here for braking or turning. I do a lot of it based off of cadence. So if we carry enough speed through T1, the car tracks out, and then we want to get over to the right-hand side of the track here. Once my tires are touching the curbing, we're going to use a little bit of trail braking pressure just to get the weight onto the front tires and start our turning. Now here we can abuse these little yellow turtles, if you want to call them that, a little bit. Now this is where the off tracks really start to come into play. Our right side tires cannot go beyond the white line against the curbing here. And on exit, we want to stay to the left-hand side. This is going to help and open up the entry to the right-hander. And of course, that leads onto a long straight. So we want to make sure that we're opening that up and getting on throttle as early as possible. Now this is another common spot for an off track. If our right side tires are getting onto this concrete patch between the curbing and the green painted surface to the left, that will be an incident point, and they are easy to collect here. So make sure we're setting that right hander up properly, and we're not going too far on exit. Now coming up to our next chicane, I'm using the 50 board on our right hand side as my braking reference. You can also just keep an eye out for the white painted surface on the wall itself. It might be a little bit easier to catch in your peripheral vision. So we're going to start braking about medium brake pressure on initial application, and then we want to trail off to a trail braking state. It's going to be pretty similar to the first chicane. We can abuse that turtle a little bit here. I did miss it ever so slightly. And we want to keep the middle of the track at most. Ideally, you want to be a little bit farther over to the left, and that's going to help open up this corner once again. We do go on to a long straight in here. Now you can use a little bit of brake pressure at the apex, again, just to help get the car turned in. And then the same rule will apply with your right side tires onto the curbing here. Don't go too far in between the curbing and that green painted surface, or an incident or an off track will get collected. Now coming up to our next right hand sweeper, this is a pretty fast corner. So I'm using this Marshall stand to the left as my reference. I'm braking it just a little bit before it. We can use the curb on entry a little bit, but we need to be very gentle with your brake pressure. So I have a pretty aggressive initial brake pressure in a straight line. As I turn my steering wheel, that pressure does bleed off rather quickly. Left side tires can get right up onto the curbing here. Think about it as if your right side tires get into the grass, you will collect an incident point there as well. Now on exit, we want to stay fairly tight to the right hand side. Again, this is going to open up the following corner. And there's a trick here. We want to get our left side tires right onto this green painted surface here. So if anybody's watched Initial D before, Takumi gets his tires into the curbing or into the gutter, and that helps grip the car up and really turn it and swing it around. So we're going to do something similar here. Once we get our left side tires into this little groove, that's going to let us get on throttle really, really early, since it'll help hook us and come through the corner. Now on exit, we can get pretty far to the right. Right side tires just into the red surface is about the limit that I want to go to. If you get any farther over, that's actually going to compromise how wide of an entry you have into this next right hand sweeper. So this is a really fast corner. If we don't open this up well enough, we're not going to carry the amount of speed we need to. Now there is camber on the inside at the apex as well. So the sooner we get into this, the more speed we can carry through the corner. And I cheese it a little bit getting into the grass there. Not recommended, but you can get away with it. We're going to be full throttle all the way out here. Your right side tires can go all the way out on exit. As long as our left side tires don't get into the gravel, you won't catch an incident point here. So this is one of those examples where the rules don't seem to apply. You can kind of just drive as far out as you'd like. So we're going to lift. You can use a little bit of trail braking pressure just to get the weight on the front tires again. And because it's uphill, we can get on throttle very early as well and really push that car up the hill. Now on exit here, again, right side tires between the rumble strips and the green painted surface will be an off track. And then coming into this next right hand turn, there's not a great braking reference here as well. You can use this little asphalt sidewalk if you'd like. That's at least a good reference. Ideally, once we crest this hill, is a little bit easier for me to focus on. So as we're coming up to it, we can kind of see that crest. So either one will work, whichever one works best for you, of course. And then as we come into the corner, we want to use some pretty aggressive initial application on the brakes. We're going to get the car turned in and then use that third gear downshift to help aid in rotation into the corner. We can hit that turtle once again, and we want to get on throttle pretty early here. The caveat though is we want to stay tight to the right hand side, which is going to help open up our left hand sweeper. This is about a medium speed corner, so we can take a good chunk of speed here, but as the race goes on, your tires will wear more and more, so be cautious of that. You can't push through that corner every single lap. Now on exit, left-hand side tires onto the curbing is okay. Again, that concrete strip between the curbing and the green painted surface will be an off-track as well. And I was picking up quite a bit of off-tracks on my sight laps doing that, so be cautious there. Now coming into our first 180 towards the end of the lap, there's a couple different lines we can take here. I like to approach it as a double apex, so I'll get off the curbing, cut in, hit this curbing on our right hand side, and then let the car flow out a little bit. Now the other line, which might be a little bit more common, is to actually carry it out pretty far into the corner and then take a wide entry in a late apex through this sweeper. Now both work, but it's all going to be relative on what's going on around you. If you have anybody close by, if you take this wide entry, that will give them an opportunity to get right inside your car. So the tighter line is a little bit faster and it's a little bit safer as far as defending goes. And we want to be very patient through here. This is a really long corner and it's downhill, so the car's naturally going to want to flow off to the left-hand side. So that's where our trail braking pressure coming into the corner and maintaining that pressure all the way to the apex or somewhere in the middle of the track is going to be really important. We also want to stay pretty tight on exit. So right as the car is pointed towards this other sidewalk here on the left-hand side of the track, once we're pointed here, that's a good indication you can get back on throttle. The corner does open up quite a bit, so if the car tracks all the way out to the left-hand side, that's okay. Now coming into this next left-right combo, we don't need to open this corner up. You can actually just about straight line it. So you'll see me cut a little bit here. We're going to cut this next one as well. And track out again, right side tires onto the curbing, but not any farther. Now coming up to the last 180, this is a very challenging corner, especially as the tires start to go. So coming into our braking zone, I use this sign as my braking reference, so I am braking just a little bit before that, right about here. So that is about halfway between this Marshall stand and the flag board. Somewhere in there is going to be key. Now for this corner, I am taking a little bit of a wide entry approach. Again, it is downhill and a long sweeper, so I want to use a good chunk of speed coming into it and then slowly scrub it off. Now I'm also going to use my downshifts from 5th into 4th into 3rd to help with rotation coming into the corner. You don't use a ton of brake pressure coming into this corner. Even the initial application at most is about 70%. So as we come in, we'll do 4th gear downshift on initial entry, 3rd gear downshift for rotation. Now it's a little tricky to figure out a good reference for getting the throttle back on. You can't necessarily rely on where the car's at or where it's pointed as far as that indicator. You're going to have to play around with this a little bit. Essentially, if we get the car pointed to the left-hand side about the middle of the corner, that's probably a good rule of thumb to start getting back on throttle. Just like our previous 180, this corner does open up quite a bit, and we can abuse a little bit of the exit here. Now, left side tires right up against the white line, you might be able to get away with a little bit of the curbing. I was picking up some off tracks here, especially farther back. So if our left side tires start to touch this area, that will definitely be an off track. So left side tires can get onto the curbing a little bit farther down the road. And with that, that's going to be our lap around Mugello. Once again, this is just a really, really good combo for the GT4s. it should produce some pretty good racing. The draft can be a little bit discouraging on the start-finish straight, but definitely hang in there. The Porsche is definitely strong through sectors 2, 3. Um, so find that tire limit where that grip is at. Make sure you're compromising your first corner to get a good setup for your second one leading onto the long straight. And once again, definitely just try to be patient through this track. As always, wish you guys the best of luck in officials, and we'll see you next week.